Right, so Iran has once again responded, as they were undoubtedly by now always going to the latest strikes by Israel, unprovoked as they again were, in the name of targeting Iranian nuclear sites and ending Iran's domestic nuclear program, as they are fully within their rights to do, but which Israel cannot tolerate the thought of. Netanyahu's decades-long fear-mongering about mythical Iranian nuclear weapons now leading us to where we are today. In the past 24 hours at time of writing, Iran have conducted an even greater, even more devastating attack on Israel, targeting military sites as well as oil refineries and electricity grid infrastructure, along with military targets hidden amongst residential areas of Tel Aviv, which might better be called Human Shield City, given the intention behind this having been done. Iran have also built on top of their history-making strikes the day before by now having taken down a third F-35 jet, again showing this supposedly unstoppable jet is very much stoppable, and igniting much fear in Israel that their madman of a prime minister has bitten off more than he can chew, and are rapidly becoming used to the fact that for so long they thought they were untouchable, only for Iran to have exploded that thinking, possibly the biggest explosion that they have actually so far triggered. Right, so the overnight sky of Tel Aviv has been torn open by flame and fury once again as the latest chapter unfolded in the conflict Israel initiated with unprovoked aggression against Iran. The Iranian response has once again been swift and devastating and precise. Operation True Promise 3 is no longer just a statement of strategic deterrence. It's evolved into a scorched earth warning against Israeli atrocity. Iran, once again attacked without evidence, without provocation, and in violation of international law, having only retaliated against Israeli strikes, has made it abundantly clear that it will not tolerate continued assassinations, sabotage, and foreign bombardment of its territory. And this time the response is making Israel wish it had never provoked such a formidable adversary. Iran's counterattacks followed Israeli operations targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure and assassinating Iranian scientists. The attacks have intensified public outrage across Iran. Iranian civilians fear an all-out war, but support their government's military response after seeing their own people killed and homes struck and destroyed in cities like Tehran and Bushehr. What followed last night, following yet more Israeli attacks, was an Iranian response that went beyond symbolic retaliation. Iranian missiles and suicide drones struck key infrastructure and military bases deep inside Israel. Notably, Iran used Emad Qadr and Khaybar Shikan missiles for the very first time in combat, ballistic missiles with extended range, pinpoint accuracy and devastating payloads, the Emad being Iran's first precision-guided ballistic missile. The targets were chosen to deliberately inflict as much damage as possible on the Israeli war machine. They included Israeli oil refineries in Haifa, which were engulfed in fire, causing mass power outages and economic paralysis. Iranian military intelligence struck strategic depth targets that Israel never imagined would be hit. Tel Aviv's military command center, the Kiryat complex, nicknamed Israel's Pentagon, was badly damaged. Israel's premier air bases such as Nevatim and Tel Nof were struck. These sites house Israel's most advanced weaponry, including the US-supplied F-35 fighter jets. Dimona, Israel's secretive nuclear facility where it suspected Israeli nuclear arsenal is kept, was also targeted, along with the Tel Aviv Nuclear Research Center. So these weren't indiscriminate strikes at all. They were deliberately targeted and selected. According to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, these barrages of missiles and drones were targeted to disable Israeli fuel production facilities for, amongst other things, its fighter jets, and to sever key energy supply lines to those military sites too. One of the most striking developments was Iran shooting down a third Israeli F-35 jet in just 2 days. They made history on day one by shooting down an F-35 for the very first time in history. It had never been done before. And then they went and did it again, this time capturing the pilot to boot. And the next day, they've repeated it for a third time. You could make an argument about piloting standards in Israel once, maybe twice, to explain how these cutting-edge jets have been shot down, but 3 times in 2 days? These jets clearly just aren't as good as Western leaders clearly thought they were, are they? Iranian defense officials have confirmed that their systems, bolstered by recent upgrades, intercepted and destroyed the aircraft and allegedly captured the pilot after they ejected on this occasion as well. Perhaps most symbolic of the changing tides is Iran's use of suicide drones to infiltrate deep into Israeli airspace. The Iranian army confirmed successful operations involving dozens of these drones that this time bypassed Israel's Iron Dome and David Sling air defense systems to strike occupied territories including Tiberias, Lower Galilee and the Golan Heights. The successful infiltration signals a significant tactical achievement because despite Israel's billion-dollar investments in missile defense and air defense, Iran's multi-layered tactical strikes are overloading those systems, and they're getting through in numbers. That isn't to say everything Iran threw at Israel got through, though, because it didn't, because Israel had help. Iranian missiles were intercepted by supposedly neutral Jordan's military whilst en route to Israel, falling on Jordanian residential areas, leading to civilian injuries and public outrage in association with that. Whilst King Abdullah seemingly jumps to Israel's tune, the population of Jordan are singing from a very different song sheet. Because whilst Jordanian government prioritised Israel's security over its own people, Jordanians, particularly those of Palestinian descent, many of whom are descendants of those who fled to Jordan during the Nakba, who already resent their government's perceived allegiance to Zionist interests, cheered. Footage online of a Jordanian wedding were filmed cheering as Iranian missiles flew overhead towards Israel as one given example. As the Iranian barrages landed, though, Israeli officials and media decried Iran for targeting residential areas. However, it's been widely exposed now that Israel embeds its military operations and its headquarters within civilian populations, intentionally using residential neighbourhoods as cover to shield military assets from attack. Where Israel jumped to accuse Iran of targeting residential areas and the Western media dutifully presents this one-sided picture as news, Iran has not targeted random civilian centres at all. It has struck dual-use sites embedded in urban areas and done so with far more precision than Israel has done in its strikes, resulting in far fewer civilian casualties, though each and every one of those could have been avoided if Netanyahu had been taken to task long before now. Iran was not alone in its military efforts, though, either. While Iranian missiles hit Haifa and Tel Aviv and Gush Dan, the Houthis of Yemen launched their own coordinated strike on Tel Aviv, showing a growing axis of regional resistance aligning against Israeli and Western imperialism where it comes to Israel and their actions. Support for Iran is mounting elsewhere as well. Pakistan has voiced full support for Iran and called for Muslim unity against Israeli aggression. Azerbaijan and Armenia, who cannot stand each other, have both condemned Israeli strikes on Iran, talking from the same singing from the same hymn sheet here, so to speak. Azerbaijan has also closed its airspace to any strikes on Iran as well. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a Eurasian political bloc consisting of an assortment of the Stan nations, as they're called, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, those kind of nations, but which also includes China and Russia, have denounced Israel's actions and have all affirmed Iran's right to defend its sovereignty, which as a sovereign nation, of course, it has a right to defend itself. That is undoubtable and indisputable. Despite the facts, Western media, of course, continue to vilify Iran. Their coverage frequently reduces Iranian strikes to being unprovoked, whilst ignoring the very real provocations and illegal assassinations that sparked this conflict, as we're seeing it happen today. Professor Mohammed Marandi, in a televised interview, took this issue particularly brilliantly to task.
Really important. But how do you know?
So are you denying that the top commanders are being killed? Are you denying that top commanders were killed?
Oh, so you mean what you're referring to basically is an attack, an act of aggression, that they suddenly fire missiles at civilian targets at apartment buildings and slaughter people in those apartment buildings, slaughtering whole families. For you, that's targeting. That's a really sophisticated act.
But if I can just ask, have military facilities been hit? Have nuclear facilities been hit?
One of the buildings that has some of these commanders, one or two of these commanders, was a large apartment building where they killed everyone, 60 people, 20 children. That's not important for people like you, but that's important for people like us. For you, people like you who support ethno-supremacism and the chosen people being able to slaughter and exterminate Palestinians.
Professor Marandi, I'm just trying to get the perspective. We're trying to give you airtime so that you can give us the Iranian perspective on this. And we want to know, and I want to understand, Iran's position here. Will you come to the negotiating table now? Donald Trump, after these series of airstrikes and this attack was launched, called on Iran to come back to the negotiating table. As the spokesperson of the regime, or as someone who worked closely with the negotiating team, do you believe they will come to the negotiating table now?
Well, your regime should know, and your news agency or your TV channel should know better. We were at the negotiating table. It was Trump that conspired with Netanyahu to attack Iran. This is how you twist the truth. You shouldn't invite me because you're easily exposed. Iran was negotiating. Initially, Trump had one position, and so did Witkoff. And then they flipped and said no enrichment. And then they continued the negotiations. And the night before the attack, Trump said that we don't want war. And then after the attack, he said, we're all for it. And you're saying Iran? Is Iran going to come back to the negotiating table? The audacity. Come on. Be a bit, show at least a bit of integrity. A bit of integrity will help.
Okay, Professor Marandi, thanks again for joining us here on the programme.
I literally could watch that guy go like this all day. It's a burn that interviewer won't forget for a while, and Morandi's smile gives away every time how much he actually enjoys tearing apart these nonsense narratives, because they are nonsense. Israel initiated this war under false pretenses. Decades of fear-mongering about Iranian nuclear weapons, championed most of all by Benjamin Netanyahu himself, had never been substantiated by anybody. Israel's aggression has not been about defence but domination, and Netanyahu seeing it as his own way to stay in power. And now, for the first time in decades, Israel is experiencing the consequences of its belligerence. Iran's retaliation has been smart, surgical, and symbolic. It has not only exposed the limits of Israeli military might, but it has galvanized a region and a world increasingly tired of the double standards and the unaccountable violence. Israel has got away with acting with impunity for far too long, and its people now suddenly realize just how vulnerable they actually truly are, with such irresponsible and deranged governance putting them in the line of fire. This war must obviously stop, but it is very difficult to see how that can be possible with Israel led by the likes of Netanyahu and those he is surrounded by. The global community must rise above the bias and the lobbies and the propaganda to confront the truth that Israel attacked a sovereign nation here without cause, and Iran's response was both lawful and proportional. They have a right to defend themselves. The longer this war continues, the more civilians will suffer. The more the myth of Israeli invincibility is shattered, the more desperate its leaders will inevitably become, and the more extreme their actions are likely going to lead to. So it is time to demand an end to this madness, not in defence of one state or another, but in defence of international law, human dignity and peace. Because in this war, as in all wars, it is the innocent who always pay the highest price. For more on how Iran made military history yesterday and how Israel really wasn't ready for it, do check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.